Hi there. Today we have the Candid Conversations, the gold here, and I caught up with him as he was driving. And see that
caught up with me. You're sitting next to me. You caught up with me. Like you were running behind me in the car. Come on, caught up. You're making people think I'm making you run behind me.
Yeah, I always run behind you. Anyway, so
whatever.
So anyway, he is driving and he's wearing a t-shirt. Amazing husband, of course. Now, today this topic is interesting. It's about unnecessary offense. It's and you're gonna listen in to understand what I mean by unnecessary, why we get unnecessarily offended by things that we should not be offended about. So earlier on, before we got into this travel, we were talking about how sometimes when you hear conversations from people saying, "Oh, I was talking to my husband about that, and I was talking to my husband about that, and I'm talking to my husband about," and I start getting offended. And I ask myself, wait a minute, why do we get offended? And I asked my husband, now we're talking about my husband, I asked him, if when a childless mother is seated in the middle of mothers, should she get offended when she hears about my child, my son did this, my son did this, or maybe like me who never had the privilege of having a father? So when somebody talks about my father did this for me, should I get offended? And it took a discussion of why is it that we unnecessarily get offended by those statements? Why does it feel like somebody is trying to brag or when they don't mean to brag about it? And even if they did, why should you get offended anyway?
Yeah, I mean, people can't stop living your life because you're missing something.
I know.
There's everybody that doesn't have something, and I think the problem is we call it around here thick skin. You have to. Some people are just I call oversensitive when it comes to certain things. There are some offenses that I get it. There are some things that we shouldn't do that are intentional, that are malicious or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they're not malicious, but they have but when you're missing something, I mean, everybody in this world is missing something.
Right.
You're missing. I mean, so then that means you can't talk about anything. Oh, you mentioned my husband. I don't have a husband, so that offends me. Okay. You mentioned my wife. I don't. Well, then you shouldn't talk to anybody because you probably have something you talk about that should offend me. It's the double standard is what kills me. It's the hypocrisy for me. If you're saying don't talk about a husband, but yet you can talk about a child, and this woman sitting next to you doesn't have a child, or this man or whatever doesn't have a son or a daughter, then wouldn't you think that by the same logic that maybe they'd be offended by you talking about something they don't have?
That's the truth.
I mean, or what if, like for our instance, my mother, I have my mother-in-law, but when me and the wife talk, I mean, my mother has passed on. When she talks about mom, should I be offended now? When I talk about pop, should she be offended since she didn't have one?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
And it's gone so bad that I've even seen people do videos of my wife, my husband stories. I mean, honestly, why do we get offended about it? We need to think about our selfishness. Years back when I was going through that difficult relationship, and this is an approved discussions.
Yes,
my husband.
it is approved.
When I was in that very toxic relationship and I was dried on and we were fighting with my ex and all those things were going on, I used to see happy couples and I would get offended. It's like I want them to stop loving on each other and doing all the, hugging and kissing and all that stuff. I don't want to delve on that stuff, but you see them, even sometimes I would probably feel bad when I see a TV commercial or a movie and I'm thinking they're happy, and that's selfishness. So we need to get out of our own selfish spaces and start asking ourselves how we manage through these unnecessary emotions and offenses that we create by what?
It's because we're jealous and we don't. And see, if we keep the same principle, Jesus said, "Do unto others as you have them do unto you." Mm-hmm. If we keep that principle, hypocrisy gets killed.
It's true.
If you're going to take offense, then the idea is this: what's good for you is good for me. What's offensive for you is offensive for me. Then, if I can't do it, neither can you. If I can't talk about my wife and I have one, and you don't, and you can talk about your son and you have one and I don't, Well, then if I can't do that, you can't do that either. So then nobody talks about anything.
Yeah, and then also I see sometimes when you are open enough to share even stories about your life and it's turned around, it's pride. You know what? I think, of course, yeah, we have space. In this world, there are people who are doing it for pride and they're trying to pull you down because you don't have it. But we need to discern, to know when people mean well with the information or whatever they are telling us, and when people mean evil to us, and then separate. And even if they meant evil, why should it offend you?
Yeah, so what? So they mean evil, so what? I mean, it's having thick skin. There's some words that people say that we shouldn't be offended by.
No.
There's some things that people... So, to be honest with you, there's nowhere in the Bible where it tells us we have a right to be offended.
No, we don't.
To take an offense is a choice.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes it's a tough choice, but you can choose not to be offended. For instance, I'm going to talk about my wife, so that offends you, I'm sorry. For instance, there are some things that my wife does that used to drive me bananas. And I'm sure it happened to her too. But you know what? Because I love her, I've chosen not to take offense. And you know what? Now it doesn't even bother me.
And the question is...
And now she doesn't do it, I'm like, what's wrong?
No, the question is, the things that I was doing, were they bad things?
No.
It's just that you have a preference of how things should be done.
Yeah, exactly.
So your preferences and your methods do not have to... We're in a world where we have diversity. We cannot do things the same. So if I decide to be eating with my left hand, why should you be offended? Oh, we don't do that. Who said the right and the wrong?
Yeah.
Especially in terms of traditions and habits.
Right.
But there are so many things that we have set as rules or as policies, and if somebody does it different, we get offended. Hey, come on. This is the Candid Conversations with the Girls, and we are saying, don't get offended over things you shouldn't get offended.
And don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, don't take something so seriously. And maybe we said something that offended you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's sorry to offend you.
All right, this is my husband. And maybe I said my husband.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. Oh, my husband. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, I love you guys. It's been amazing, and we hope to catch you on another Candid Conversation with the Girls. God bless you. Shalom. We love you.
Yeah, we love you.